Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari, and today I'm bringing you a book haul, but make it a game show. So every month I pretend that I am not buying too many books because I read too many books in the month. And in this game show, it's not really a game show, but I'm calling it a game show. You can find me on that. In this game show, I compare the number of books I've read and gotten off of my TBR to the number of books I've purchased, thus adding to my TBR. And so the first number that I need to talk to you about today is the books that I read last month that were capable of ever being on a TBR. If I get a book from the library, or if I buy an ebook or something, it's not something I'm ever gonna haul. So those books don't count. What does count are the 15 of the 18, I think I read 18 books last month, but 15 of those books count for books that have been removed from my TBR last month. And these are the books that I've purchased. Now how this works is for every book on here, I talk to you about it and add it to this TBR count over here. And then if I have read it before this month, then this number over here will go up. If I haven't read it before this month, or haven't read it at all, this number doesn't change. So at the end, we want this number to remain higher than this number over here. Can I do it? Well, I mean, you're about to find out, so here we go. The first book I'm going to talk about is the book that I got from my Coffee in the Classic book box this month, and that is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is a series of short stories. And I think they're coming of age stories, though I could have just made that up. And I have no interest in reading this. So it's gonna go on my classic shelf for now, and maybe someday in the distant future I will get around to reading it. Next up I want to say this is from my Book Nerd Essentials box, from Misplaced Muse Creative. This is The Jungle Book by Rudyard. Why can't I say Rudyard Kipling. My brain is not exiting out of the mouth correctly. Anyway, The Jungle Book. This is a gorgeous cover. It's a tiny little book. I like it. I believe The Jungle Book is also a series of short stories, and I am actually kind of interested in reading this, but I still probably won't get to it anytime soon. Next up, a book box book that I did read this month, and this is Rosewater by Tade Thompson. I got this from my Aphronomenon book box subscription, and this was supposed to be dark academia, but it is not. This is alien sci-fi, following a character who can read minds, and there's stuff about aliens. And this is a non-linear timeline. So some people like that, I hate that. So this wasn't a book for me. I gave it 3 stars because the writing was good, I just don't like non-linear timelines. Next up are 2 books from the Strand Book Box, and this is the first Strand Book Box I've got. This is a quarterly book box. You get it 4 times a year instead of monthly, and I didn't like either one of these books. I gave this one a 2 stars and I DNF'd this one. So this is a dystopian sci-fi about a city that kind of floats in the middle of the ocean because, you know, the coastlines are gone and governments have collapsed in each city where humanity has managed to survive. Each city is just ruled by its own self, and yeah. I just didn't like this. There was some extremely problematic content in here. with a AIDS-like virus that I hated, so just this isn't for me. This one is about like a future where human work has mostly been replaced by robots and there's like a gig economy, but in order for humans to keep up with the robots, they have to take like a bunch of drugs to like either increase their productivity or increase their brain, and it's just depending on what job you have different drugs. And this is about like a terrorist group called the Machine Hood, who are like committing terrorist acts trying to get rights for robots, even though robots aren't supposed to have feelings or anything like that. I don't really know what it's about because I DNF'd it. This has a lot of anti-abortion discussions in here that I did not appreciate. Even there is a good chance that the author comes back and says like all of that rhetoric is like awful, but I wasn't interested enough in reading about the subject at all to find out what the author's final opinion on whether a woman should have her own rights to her body or if her husband has a say in what she can do with her body. I just don't care to read that, so I DNF'd it. Next up is from Book of the Month Club, and this is Liberty by Caitlin Greenidge. No, Greenidge. I don't know. I'm adding letters to her last name, and I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, I got this, but I didn't have time to read it last month. I just ran out of days, and I don't remember what this is about. This is coming of age of a young black girl in Brooklyn, and that's as far as I got into the synopsis, and I don't care to read anymore. I'll get around to it eventually, I'm just not sure when. And the final book box this month is the sci-fi book. Holy shit. The Sci-Fi Book Club? Sci-Fi Book Box? I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, I got 2 books from there and I didn't read either one of them. The first book I got in here was Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade, and this book is not going to increase this count at all because I already own it. I'd already purchased it for myself a while ago. I haven't read it yet, but I do already own it, so I'm not gonna like add to my TBR because it was already on my TBR. Anyway, what I think this is about, it's been a minute, let me double check. So what I understand this book is about is it's a very typical like chosen one storyline. So this guy Matthias is the chosen one. He's destined to save the universe. But what if he sucks at that? And his friends have to do it for him. It sounds really interesting. I do plan to read this month. So just knocking it to May instead of reading it in April when I got it in a book box. The other book that I got in this book box is Lies of Descent, which is the Fallen Gods War Book 1 by Troy Carol Butcher. And I don't know what this is about. So the Fallen Gods War drove the remnants of a victorious army across the ocean in search of a new homeland. And 1,000 years later, the lifeless continent of Dragora is largely forgotten. And it's a symbolic place, right? And then 2 characters are unknowing descendants of the old world, and they are dragged away from their families to begin training for this army. And yeah, I guess it follows them. So it sounds pretty typical fantasy, but it doesn't sound bad. So I don't know when I'm going to read this though. Next up is the stack of books I bought for myself, and I think I did an okay job of controlling my shit this month. All of these are pre-orders. Just so you're aware, they're all pre-orders. So first is The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. I have already read this. I got an arc of this, and I read it, I don't know, last month, the month before, I don't know. But I definitely have already read this as an e-arc, and I love Becky Chambers. She is one of my favorite authors, so I went ahead and kept the pre-order because I want a physical copy of this 5-star book. Read everything that Becky Chambers ever talks to you about in existence. This is great, but I get to add another thing over here as well as over here. Next up, I did pre-order The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is book 3 in the Blood and Ash. Yeah, Blood and Ash series. I did not get a chance to read this, even though I really enjoyed this series, and I don't know when I'm going to get around to read this because it's chunky. But yeah, I definitely want to read this. I don't know when I have the time to read it. So eventually sometime this year I'll get around to it. It's not like an immediate priority. Hopefully I can work it into my Dungeon of Books sometime soon. What this is about is probably more what you care about than when I'm gonna read it. It's hard to say because it is the 3rd book in a series of chunky books, but it's basically this young girl named Poppy is a maiden, and she's kind of like a virgin sacrifice type thing without the, like, you know, sacrificing part. She has to be kept pure for her ascension, blah 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 blah, and she doesn't really want to do that, and then she meets a hot guy, and then fantasy romance, but make it vampires. Next up is a pre-order from a very long time ago because this is 2 books that I backed a Kickstarter for. The first is Dawn Shard, which is a novella in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives series, right? So the Way of Kings, like that series. This is, oh god, 3.5 maybe? I don't remember exactly. It could be 4.5, 3.5, but you read this after Oathbringer and before Rhythm of War. Yes. And this follows a character that you get a lot in the interludes in the Stormlight Archives, and her name is, oh god, I don't remember how you pronounce her name. Rysn? R-Y-S-N? I don't know. I'm bad at this. I should listen to the audiobooks of these sometimes so I know how to pronounce characters' names. But she is going on a mission to a island to help out a friend, and she's also doing some other things for, like, the government. So they send some of Bridge 4 with her. So you follow her and Lopin, and Lopin is everybody's favorite character, so he's always really fun to read about, and there are some other Bridge 4 guys, but this is all like a short novella with some side characters, and just like a fun little extra to the Stormlight Archives, if you're interested, but you need to read the first 3 books of the Stormlight Archives to have any fucking idea what's going on in this one. So, there you go. The other book also kind of pertains to the Stormlight Archive, and that is this book. It doesn't come with a dust jacket. You just see this. This is The Way of Kings Prime, right? And so you would think that this is just like a fancy version of The Way of Kings, which is the first book of the Stormlight Archive, but no, that's not what this is at all. This is The Way of Kings Prime, and the Prime is important because when Brandon Sanderson was in college, he wrote The Way of Kings Prime, and it is a completely fucking different book from The Way of Kings. This was his original idea for, like, the first book of the Stormlight Archive. The characters have different names, the story is completely different. I don't even think Kaladin's an important character, if he exists at all in this, but this is that original story that he never published, and then he went later on to publish, like, Elantris and Warbreaker and Mistborn and all of the other books that he published before Way of Kings. But he had taken like that initial idea that's in this book and redid the whole fucking thing and then made the Way of Kings as it is today. So this is that original story. I don't actually have plans to like read this anytime soon. I'm kind of just a completionist and want everything that Brandon Sanderson's ever written. But as far as like reading this, it's probably just going to go straight on my shelf and not on my TBR. I'll still add it to my TBR for this video, but because I haven't read it, it's not The Way of Kings, so I definitely haven't read it. But like I said, I don't have any plans to read it at any point anytime soon. I may go read it after like the whole Way of Kings series is done in like another 10 years. But yeah, I wanted this for completionist purposes and not because I want to read it. Brandon Sanderson himself says like, this is not a very good book. I'm guessing this was a part of a Kickstarter for the leather-bound edition of, I believe, Rhythm of War, but since I had no I had no reason to buy a leather-bound edition of Rhythm of War, I ended up buying the other books that came with the Kickstarter, which this was one of the two, like, bonus things from that Kickstarter. The last section, as always, are my librofm picks for the month. I am a influencer, or part of the influencer program for librofm. There is a giant spider on my wall. Thank you. I'm part of the librofm influencer program, and they have a range of audiobooks that I can choose from every month to receive for free. I do not choose all of the audiobooks because I don't listen to audiobooks very often, so I choose a handful of like the 6 or 7 that they provide every month that I am really interested in. And so I have 3 kind of. So the first one is 1, 2, 3 by Lori Frankel, and this is a contemporary fiction that talks about twins and then like poisonous water and the government not dealing with like a drinking water that has been poisoned in a city. So it sounded interesting, but I don't really know a whole lot about it. The next book I picked up was Troy by Stephen Fry. This is basically a retelling of Troy, of like the Iliad is the Troy story, so it's a retelling of the Iliad by the actor Stephen Fry, and narrated by him. So I was like, that sounds really fucking cool. Sure, let's pick that up. The third audiobook that I got is not going to add to my count here because it's just the audiobook of Liberty. So I just figured I could listen along or choose which, if I feel like reading or listening to it at a time, and it was free, so why not add that on and just give me 2 options to read this book whenever I get around to reading this book. And that's everything. Let me know what you think about the books I hauled in this video. Do any of them sound really interesting? Are there any of them that you think that I should like very, very much prioritize? Or any of them that you're like, you shouldn't have spent your money on that. That was really bad. Like, just hide that in a corner and pretend like you don't have it anymore. Let me know down in the comments if you like my little fun game show of, do I buy too many books? Which I think I did good this month. Hit that subscribe button. Hang out with me. I do weird shit like this all the time. Anyway, I'll talk to you next month. Bye.